Want more from TLDR? Then be sure to subscribe to all of our sister channels, TLDR UK, US and Global. They're linked below, so thanks for your support. There's been a lot going on lately. The American withdrawal from Afghanistan, the chaos at Kabul airport, and the continuing coronavirus crisis. So it's been easy to overlook the importance of the upcoming German election, with one of the continent's most influential countries on the brink of choosing a new leader. However, it is on the horizon, so it's important that we have a brief look at the background to it, and what the polls currently suggest might happen. Currently, the government consists of the Christian Democratic Union and their Bavarian sister party, the Christian Social Union, as well as the SDP. The CDU and CSU are centre-right leaning, whereas the SDP are left-leaning. Currently, the CDU-CSU alliance and the SDP are two of the main contenders to win the election and decide who will succeed Merkel as the Chancellor of Germany. The third party who are in the running for chancellorship are the Greens. They could, theoretically, form a coalition with other left-wing parties, or potentially even with the CDU themselves. So, if these are the three main parties in the running, who are they putting forward as their chancellery candidates? Well, for the past couple of decades, the answer for the CDU-CSU has been consistent: Angela Merkel. But with her stepping down, someone new has to take the reins. And although Armin Laschet may have been successful in beating off his competition in the CDU leadership race, he's not necessarily off to the best start when it comes to succeeding Merkel. But we'll come back to that later. Because it's important to note that Laschet doesn't just represent the CDU. He's also the candidate for the sister party CSU, and that's where some issues have arisen. The CSU's leader and Bavarian Premier, Markus Söder, took on Laschet attempting to become the Union Party's nominee, and only narrowly lost out. But despite this, Söder is vastly more popular among conservative voters. This lack of popularity for Laschet is hurting the Union in the polls, and hurting them badly. While support for the Union did rally up around July to just shy of 30%, the floods which devastated Germany, and saw Laschet lambasted for laughing in its aftermath, have caused their support to collapse back down to 22%, with no sign of the decline stopping anytime soon. The real story in recent days and weeks comes from the SPD. Having been polling at a relatively consistent 15 or 16% for about a year now, since the beginning of August, support has been inching up. So much so that in Politico's most recent poll of polls, the SDP actually were in the lead at 24%. The first time that the Social Democrats have surpassed the CDU-CSU in over 15 years. Led by Finance Minister Olaf Scholz, the SDP are one of the only parties being led by a candidate with a long and proven record of executive experience, with Politico arguing that many voters see Scholz, a moderate, as the next best thing to Merkel, whose centrist course has helped make her the country's most popular politician. In an extremely heated three-way debate between the leaders of the three parties vying for the chancellery, it was ultimately Scholz who voters believe came out on top. A snap poll conducted immediately in the debate's aftermath saw 36% of voters back Scholz, 30% Annalena Baerbock, and just 25% Laschet. To make matters even worse for Laschet, another polling firm decided to run polling on a hypothetical direct vote for the Chancellor, i.e., if the Chancellor had to be directly elected by the population, who would come out on top? The answer? Well, it was Scholz by an even bigger margin, with 31% backing Scholz, 14% Baerbock, and a pitiful 10% for Laschet. However, as we've mentioned, this isn't a two-course race, because this election in particular has seen the Green Party rapidly come into and then straight back out of favour with the German electorate. At one point in May, the Greens were actually leading the polls with about 25%, just edging out the Union alliance and vastly surpassing the SDP at the time. Since then though, that support has more or less evaporated. Following a number of controversies, the Greens fell back down to third place in the polls, standing at about 18% today. This sheer volatility in the polling has made projections about who's going to win, and crucially what the government might look like, incredibly difficult. To go from a country that saw Merkel confidently returned as Chancellor in 4 separate elections, spanning more than a decade, to an election that is, in the eyes of many, too close to call, is, well, tough to reconcile. Some are already talking up the possibility of a 3-way Jamaica coalition between the CDU-CSU alliance, the Greens, and currently the 4th largest party, the Free Democrats. What complicates matters even further is the role of the remaining smaller parties, regardless of whether or not these smaller parties hit the 7% threshold. It seems that this election is very much posing the question, does Germany want a new Merkel? If they do, then who resembles her the most? And if they don't, what type of alternative do they want? And perhaps this all has something to do with the German political culture, that seems to assign great value to stability and professional statesmanship. In fact, it seems that Scholz is doing so well because he manages to present himself as the calm statesman, representing a mild shift from Merkel's character. Whereas the approach taken by Laschet in the televised debate we mentioned earlier shows a very different style. The Merkel perspective might also reveal why personal scandals impact the election so much, such as the incidents surrounding Laschet and the flood, and the personal allegations around Baerbock. This election really seems to be about how to take Germany from the Merkel era to the next. And this can partly be seen in the difference between party polling and the hypothetical direct Chancellor election polling. Although the CDU-CSU is on 22%, Laschet is on 10%. In essence, now more than ever, some are seeing Scholz, not Laschet, as the continuity candidate, and as a safe pair of hands. In fact, this continuity issue even emerges within the CDU. Some campaigning for the union are pushing hard for a strong and uncompromising return to a balanced budget known as Black Zero, as well as reactivating the debt brake in the German constitution. However, Merkel herself has been less emphatic, with her own chief of staff calling for the continued suspension of the debt brake, only further demonstrating the difference of opinion between the old and new guard of the union, and highlighting why some see the SDP as the right path forward. That's because with interest rates so low, the climate crisis on the horizon, and the aftermath of the pandemic all coming to the fore, the SDP are, whether rightly or wrongly, calling for continued spending. To further add to this continuity candidate image, during the 3-way debate, Scholz repeatedly name-dropped Merkel, stating that the Chancellor and I concurred on a number of issues. In any case, there's only a matter of weeks before the election actually takes place on the 26th of September. A matter of weeks for any candidate to fall by the wayside or rally round and steal the stage. But what do you think? Will Scholz's surge continue? Can Laschet or Baerbock rescue their campaigns in this late stage? And ultimately, who should win? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Also, be sure to subscribe to the channel for more updates on this election and other European issues. You can also support us on Patreon, and in return, you'll get perks like seeing your name at the end of videos. To do that, you can click the link in the description.